Good morning. My name is Orly Cormier, and welcome to the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show, where we set an intention to create healing and wellness every living day. Let me ask you, have you felt sometimes that life is just hard? Wonder if I told you that our life is actually meant for joy, fun, and good health. Of course, it doesn't just happen, but the first step to getting there is to believe that good health is possible and to envision what you would love. From there, we can choose the simple health habits that give our minds, bodies, and spirits the nourishment it needs to work well. Over 2 million people in the U.S. will be diagnosed with cancer this year. Between 600,000 and 1 million are preventable. Our genes are not our destiny, yet our epigenetics can be affected by environmental factors. Therefore, the best time to make a difference is now. So let's dive right in.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Pat. I'm going to kick us off because I want to introduce Orly for a minute in a slightly different way. This show, okay, now, the average person would not really have the experience to do a show like this. But here's what I want to say. Orly has worked with parents, families, going through the most stressful, traumatic times. No one likes to see the way the word cancer show up. We don't even say that word. So what we're doing in today's show is she's going to come from a lifelong experience of stressful events in our country today and stressful events in our lives. So how do we help our children deal with the stressful events in our country today, fully knowing they're going on, but somehow thinking our kids just not are up on current events? Orly, what an episode today. I mean, you got a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to turn over the mic to you and walk us through this. And you are an expert that talks to parents and children alike about something, the one word that nobody likes to hear. So talk about this. Take us on the journey for this.
Right. So I'm going to start with a story, and it's not a story where the parent has cancer, but the child is under a significant amount of stress that is insignificant compared to what some children are dealing with when their parents have cancer or they have leukemia and the whole family's under stress. But I grew up in a small town, and I had heard this story that it's a true story about a 5-year-old little girl. I'll call her Annie, even though that's not her real name. And she was 5 years old. She was going into first grade, and the school that she was going to was 2 towns away. It was a parochial school. And the high school bus was going to go right by her house and go right by the parochial school where she was going to school before it got to the high school. So her parents thought it would be a good idea or reasonable that the high school bus could pick her up at the end of their driveway, bring her to the parochial school, drop her off, and then they could go on and drop off the high school kids. So first day of school comes, the mom and the little girl are standing at the end of the driveway, and the bus stops, and the little girl gets on the bus, and the bus driver's going, "What are you doing?" And, the mother said that, could they please take her and drop her off at the parochial school on the way to the high school? And the bus driver was furious. He's like, "This is a public school bus. We don't take kids to the parochial school. You're going to have to figure out a way to get your daughter to the parochial school." And he pushed the little girl off the bus. And so the little girl and the mother were, very distraught over this. And, it took a little bit to collect their sense of self and safety. And the mother said, "All right, I'm going to drive her to school." So she did. She drove the little girl to school. But the mother was still distraught by the time they got to the parochial school. So what she did is she wrote a note. She handed it to the little girl. She handed it to Annie and said, "Get out of the car, and I want you to go in to the front of the building there. You see the door, and I want you to give this to your teacher." So the little girl hadn't been there before. She wasn't really sure where she was going. She goes inside the school, but eventually gets to the first grade classroom, goes through the day. Now it's time to go back home. So Annie, being very timid, she just follows all the other kids out the door, and they all get on a bus, and Annie gets on, as I was told, Annie gets on a bus, the same one that the little girl in front of her got on. She just followed the little girl in front of her onto a school bus, and a couple hours go by, and the mother's waiting at home, wondering, where is Annie? And so at this point, she's getting worried, and so she gets in her car and she starts driving up and down the highway, looking for a school bus. She finally sees a school bus, waves the school bus down. The school bus pulls over, and I guess as the story goes, Annie was the last one on the bus, and Annie gets off the bus. She's crying hysterically. The mother takes her home, figures out where she's supposed to drop the little girl off to get the school bus the next day, which was in another town. And so she gets her to the school bus the next morning, and the bus comes, and as the bus pulls up to get the kids at that stop, Annie sees the bus and she starts throwing up. And the mother grabs her by the arm and pulls her onto the bus, sits her down, runs off the bus. The bus driver closes the doors, and away they go. And off the school bus goes to school. And so, as you can imagine, this was the first instance of trauma and stress for little Annie, and this impacted on her. So for 3 years, while she was going to that parochial school, she threw up quite a bit. She would get to school, start throwing up, and it became so common that I guess they waited for, she had to throw up for a certain number of times before they called the mother to come pick her up. Fourth grade comes and the family moves away and they go to another town. And I guess Annie never had any instances of stomach problems or vomiting when she went to school. She loved the public school and her new friends. And so it became a non-issue. But I tell this story because there's so many things going on in our country today between, the internet, the YouTube, the breaking news, the instant news, and a lot of it is violent with ICE raids, people being killed, shootings in schools, at churches, at Walmart, the war, now exploding over in the Middle East. And some of these children have parents who are now being deployed overseas, that a lot of children in our country are going through stress. And then we have situations where we actually have an increase in the number of young people, 30 to 50, who are being diagnosed with cancers that we never saw in people in that age group before. Things like colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, and others. And so, a lot of these people are parents too, and they have young children, and this is causing a lot of stress within the family. So, and then you have the situation where, moms and dads oftentimes today, as the mom, they're the health manager of the home. Typically, the dad is the supporter, protector. But today you'll have situations where dads are actually going out, and they're the ones that, the moms are going out to work and the dads are staying home taking care of the kids. So the dads will know the children better than the moms do because they're with them most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we, during these times when children are under a lot of stress and families are under a lot of stress, the moms and dads, many of them are working a full-time job and under stressful conditions, and with the economy and some kids not getting enough food to eat, or the family's not getting enough food to eat, it puts a lot of stress on the entire family. That what do we do about this? How do we help our children so they don't become traumatized? Because as a young child, stress and trauma can actually rewire the brain. And what we want to do is help that child to have a resilient brain. So we're going to talk about some of those things as we go along. I just wanted to highlight why we're, taking on this topic and what we can do about it. So because many families today, you have two parents working, and children oftentimes, now for some families, a child will have a nanny that will take care of the child in their own home, which can be very helpful. For other families, they are in a very small private home where there's maybe 4 or 5 children that are being taken care of by one daycare provider. And then for many other children, they're in a large premium daycare center where the children are separated by age group. And so it's important when we, at the end of the day, after we've worked and, we've had a lot of stress ourselves, just to check in with the daycare provider, what happened, that if anything significant happened that day. Did they have, did they get to go out and play, or they were indoors, or they had a special party for one of the children? What are some of the things that highlighted that day? And also having a greater awareness when we pick up our child, how do they seem? Do they seem like they're happy and energetic, or do they seem tired? Did they take a nap that day? Did they have certain play routines where they got together and the kids, had a game that they played and they all had fun together? So just checking in with the daycare person or the nanny or the daycare center, what are some of the things that they could tell us about our child for that day? And then also asking your child, and when children are very young, it may just be a shake of the head or the no, but did they have a good day? Did they have fun with their friends? And then as they start to grow and they get a little older, then asking them specifically, so what was their day like? Did they have fun? Who did they play with? Who are the friends that they really enjoyed being with? Did they have a special game that they got to do, or they got to do some drawing, or they got to go outside and, play on the swing set or down the slide? Like, what was their day like? Did they take a nap? I mean, sometimes kids come home, they can be overtired and cranky, and that can, they can seem like they're in a really bad place, but it's just because they're overtired. So if they can catch up on some of that sleep, they will be better. But just not only checking in with the people overseeing your children, but checking in with your children themselves. How was their day? What can they tell you about how their day went, and what was the best part of their day? And then also, how are they behaving? Just because you are their parent, you know them better than anyone. And so you can assess how they seem at the end of the day. And the other thing that is important, and it's hard to really talk about this, but because we are not there with them during the day, and especially when children are young and they don't talk as well, they don't express themselves as well, but just let your children know that if anyone does anything to them that they don't like, or maybe, there was something that happened that was hurtful, tell mom or dad about it, so the child feels comfortable, talking to you about those things, and rather than keeping it to themselves. And then as they get older, they'll be able to express themselves a little bit more, but you just keep that dialogue going about, was there anything that happened during the day that they didn't like, or that was very hurtful to them? Because that is important information to know. I will say, as my daughter was in daycare for many years, and the first daycare she went to, I can remember picking her up soon after I got out of work and finding 5 babies lined up in their little booster chairs in front of the television watching a very contentious adult show. And I thought to myself, really? You're letting like 6 month to 9 month old
Yeah.
baby watch an adult contentious show? Like, I would think they might have music or Barney or Caillou or some sort of a children's program on, not something that could stress a child or that is inappropriate for a child. So I went home that day and I quickly got my daughter to another daycare.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there are things we know. That right there that you mentioned,
yep,
that's a no. No.
right,
We know so much now about the formative years
yep,
that you might as well be playing hard rock in front of them. But you took action, didn't you?
yes, yeah. And that's why it's important, because you know your child so well, to not only ask them how their day went, to ask the daycare person how their day went, but also observe their behavior. And then the other thing that I keep in mind is, I know that 95, 99% of these daycare providers, they are so dedicated to their job.
Yeah.
They love children. They want to know that they're cared for, they're supported, they're encouraged. And so appreciating the daycare providers that are working hard to take care of your child is important too, because then that reinforces to them that you are behind them, you appreciate them, and they're going to put in even more effort towards your child. But the other thing that we have to keep in mind today, especially because we have a war going on, is that there's going to be a lot of moms or dads who are going to be deployed overseas, and they are going to be separated from their children for significant periods of time. It may be 6 months, it may be 9 months, it may be a year. And so what does a parent who's deployed do to keep that connection? And one of the things that can be done is writing a letter. Um, you know, the I don't I have to say, I don't know if they allow internet letters to go through because of the risk that it would be intercepted and then people know where they are. But um, uh, a lot of times service members will write a handwritten letter to their child. And if you can do that once a month so that the child knows that the parent's thinking of them, they love them, they're proud of them, they want to hear what they're doing, and that keeps the connection going. And I know for as just as an example, one dad uh had a daughter, a very young daughter, and he used to write a letter and start the letter out, "My little princess." And that made her feel so special. So those are the things that you can do to maintain that connection, even though you're far away, and it's a huge amount of stress on a military family when one of the parents is deployed.
Yeah.
And yeah. So the other thing is, uh, when parents get home from work, I think a lot of times, and this was something that I had to reflect on myself, is I would want to get home, and of course I had to get dinner, but I also was like, okay, so what happened on the news today? And at one point I had to stop myself and say, this is not helpful for my daughter to be watching the news, which is very negative, violent, real. Breaking news especially can be significant. And so I would change it to maybe some Yo-Yo Ma music. So playing the cello, or I would, put on Barney or Caillou or whatever. And some before we had dinner. Now, when we sat down and ate dinner, we could have background music, but we never had the TV going or the internet going. But because I'd have a conversation with her, but still, uh, just being aware that although it's easy to default to, I want to watch the news, that is probably more stressful to that child's nervous system. And if you can wait until after they go to bed, or when they're not around, maybe they're uh, I don't know, they're engaged in some other
Mhm.
activity, and you do it quietly so that they don't have to hear
Yeah.
it. That can be really helpful so that they're, or maybe
Yeah.
they said, put on like Sesame Street, The Magic School Bus, Barney, while you're listening to the news, and they can
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, in the world we live in today, most parents that are traveling already know the news before they get home.
yeah,
Television is a secondary option, but they're already getting pop-ups like today. Just hovering over the bottom of your page, you get pop-up news. So
yeah,
we're living in a time now where I'm not sure that watching the news
yeah,
keeps you up to date. Watching the news is a different psychological factor now
yeah,
because, what are you going to find out about the news that you didn't have on your phone? Now, if you don't have access to those kind of notifications, then yes. But to your point, I mean, it's almost impossible to have the news blasting and your
yeah,
child not hear it.
right, right, yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say that I thought was really helpful when my daughter was growing up, she went to a pre-kindergarten class where there were typicals, and then there were kids that had maybe a learning disability, or they had a health challenge like diabetes requiring insulin. It was half and half. And she got to be in a classroom with many different types of children. And at that age, you just want to play with everybody, or you just accept naturally, you accept everybody. And I really think it helped her to be a very
Mm.
open-minded, very kind, compassionate person. Uh, that's another thing, just keeping in mind that when when your child is playing, let them just play with whoever is around, rather than you've got to pick, you play with this, no, don't play with this one, so that they can just experience life as it is and be blessed with who the person that they're playing with. And so in terms of some of the other things that I thought would be really helpful is, you want to keep their, especially anytime they're under stress, or if say a parent has cancer, it's going to alter the routine in the family because they have to take dad to the doctor. And so they don't, get to go to the playground immediately. They've got to drop dad off at the doctor, go to the playground, come back, get dad, whatever. Is try to keep their routine as normal as possible, because when they are stressed, to have a routine they're not familiar with can add more stress onto
Yeah.
their psyche. Ensure they have a nutritious meal if at all possible, to keep their mind, body, and spirit as healthy as possible, to get enough sleep, because the lack of sleep, because of the detoxification we do in our brain every night and every day when we sleep, it's really important to have them get an adequate amount of sleep. And then and enough physical activity. But the other thing that I love that T. Berry Brazelton reminded me all the time, I would follow his talks and I would go to some of his conferences, is we want to note the strengths that our children have, highlight those strengths, because then they'll do more of that. And then also introduces them to some of these stress management practices that we've talked about before, because there is a new book out, which we'll talk more about in the future, but people may want to get this book called Born to Flourish. It just came out by Richard Davidson. It is a beautiful book. And basically, what he found in his research is that if we can help children from a very young age to do some of these stress management practices, like kids yoga, like mindfulness meditation, or just breathing, the act of taking a deep breath in and a slow breath out, that kids could do a belly breathing, that helps to calm the nervous system and can help strengthen the brain, because he did a lot of research on this, where he did functional MRIs on Buddhist monks that had meditated at least 10,000 hours. And what he found is that the hippocampus for emotions was thicker than the average person, where the amygdala that oftentimes picks up on stress, that was smaller in these super meditators. So he started studying a lot of young children, found that if we can help young children to do these mindfulness meditation or yoga when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, years old, it helps their brain to be more resilient. They're less likely to develop these anxieties, and they also are much more resilient to any stress that happens around them. So it's a wonderful practice to help your children, to help them to be more resilient in the future. So I have
I can't wait until you do the book, but you have a couple things coming up that's going to help people. Tell us about those and how we find out more about you.
Oh, sure. So I have one of my favorite programs I do is a 2-day free masterclass called Envisioning the Life You Would Love. I do this several times over the year, and I'm doing my next one on Tuesday and Wednesday, September 8th and 9th, from 7 to 8:30 Eastern time, which is 4 to 5:30 Pacific time, and everything in between. And it's really fun, and it's a great way to decide, especially during this fire horse energy year, what you want your health to be, your relationships, your career, your time and money freedom, and really work towards those goals one at a time, but you will get there when you have that mindset. The other thing that I'm doing, I'm really excited about, is Legacy Reset, Prevention, Survivorship, and Healing. And this is actually for people that have a personal or a family history of cancer that want to keep themselves, their health, mind, body, spirit, stable for the long term, or to survive and heal for the long term. That program is a 5-week program. It starts on September 16th, which is a Wednesday, 7 to 8:30 Eastern time, which is 4 to 5:30 Pacific time. It's on Zoom from the comfort of your own home. The free masterclass is also on Zoom. And this one is $297 per couple, but it's well worth it when you consider it's per couple for 5 weeks. So I would love to have you join us. I think, especially for anyone that has a personal or family history of cancer, this is something that can really help you and your kids for the long term.
Thank you. Thank you for a powerful show today, because we can't talk about this enough. Thank you, Orly, for everything. Again, please give them your website.
Yes. So it's my name, OrlyCormier.com. You plug that into Google and it will come up with Intentional Wellness Parenting. It has my Transformation Talk Radio. It's got my workshops. It's got the children's book that I wrote that I would love to, it's meant to help little kids to have fun with reading and to build some good habits for the long term. So check it out.
And I want to just say to everybody, it's never too late. If you're thinking, no, any day, any time, you can reset. Reach out to Orly. She knows a ton about it and will be able to help you. Orly, awesome.
Yes,
awesome
thank
show.
You so
thank
much,
you.
Dr. Pat. You've been listening to the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show with Orly Cormier and Dr. Pat, where we create healing and wellness every living day. Tune into Transformation Talk Radio every third Tuesday of each month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific and 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more guidance and support. Beyond this, I offer workshops to focus on your good health while reducing risk of disease, especially cancer, so you can do more of what you love and spend less time being sick. What I know for sure is that this is especially beneficial for couples who are pregnant, have young children, or teens, as you will give yourself and kids the greatest chance of living a longer, healthier life. So please join us at the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show. For more information, visit OrlyCormier.com.